It's a Marty party.
Ooh, still hot. Still hot. Love that mug. All right, a little bit of happier topic. The Artemis II mission. You may have been hearing recently that, I've seen reels and posts all over social media about, like, we're going back to the moon. Did you know we're going back to the moon? Like, and it's happening soon. Well, I want to use part of this to say, hey, yeah, we are in pursuit of going back to the moon, and that's really exciting. I love the space program. There's so many benefits that we've gotten as a society from the fact that our nation was the preeminent leader in space for a very long time, and the technologies that we've developed, the medicines we've developed, all that sort of stuff is a good thing. So the fact that we are doubling down on returning to the moon, I think, is a very exciting thing, but we're not doing it right now. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So Artemis II is the spaceship, for lack of a better term. That's not probably the most accurate term, scientific term, but Artemis II is the craft that is going to be carrying 4 astronauts up into space. They will not be landing on the moon. They are, however, going to be it's going to be the first time that humans have traveled that far into space since NASA's Apollo missions ended in 1972. So they're going to go circle around the moon, but they're not landing on it. Now, rather than landing, this is going to be basically a test period to work a lot of things out for a future landing. Now, this mission will last approximately 10 days and was targeting a February 8th launch. That's why you've probably been seeing a lot of stuff pop up in social media about this is happening like in a couple of days. That was the plan, but unfortunately, NASA identified a few issues during a pre-launch test to fuel the rocket. Engineers pushed through several challenges during a 2-day test and met many of the planned objectives. That's a good thing. But they want to allow teams to review the data and conduct a second what's called a wet dress rehearsal. So they are now targeting March as the earliest possible launch opportunity. They also released the astronauts from quarantine. They'd been quarantined as required for a certain amount of time. Astronauts are let out of quarantine now, go take a breather, see their families, et cetera, instead of waiting all the way until March again. I imagine they'll have to re-enter quarantine here shortly. Now, this will be the first crewed flight of NASA's new Space Launch System, or SLS, rocket and Orion spacecraft. Both are designed to carry humans into deep space and pave the way for future moon landings and fingers crossed, future opportunities to land on Mars. Whew, I am excited about that. The future is bright. Now, the spacecraft will carry astronauts further from Earth than any humans have gone before, and they will return at speeds around 25,000 miles per hour, faster than any previous crewed mission. They will lose contact with any other human for about 40 minutes while they are on the backside of the moon. So when they leave Earth and they kind of slingshot around the moon, when they get to the backside of the moon relative to Earth, there's going to be about a 40 or 41 minute period, NASA said, where they will be completely out of touch with any other human in the fucking galaxy. That's wild. I mean, you can say, oh, there's humans right now that are out in the middle of the Canadian woods somewhere, miles and miles and miles from the nearest human, and they're pretty alone too. The fact that these people are not on the same planet as any other humans and out of touch with any other humans, period, I would argue that those 4 people will be the most alone a human can be, at least at this point in history. I don't think it's possible to be more alone than they will be in those 40 minutes, completely on their own. Now, who's going? Well, there's 4 astronauts who will be flying on this mission. These 4 people, I think, 3 of them are American, 1 is Canadian. They all, even the fact that they are volunteering to go do this, I think instantly makes them heroes in my mind. These are going to be people to look up to. First up, we've got the commander of Artemis II, Reed Weissman. He's a NASA astronaut and the former chief of NASA's astronaut corps with extensive space flight experience. And then we've got the pilot for Artemis II. That's Victor Glover. He's a NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy test pilot, bringing strong operational and flight expertise to the mission. And then we've got Christina Koch, who is a mission specialist for Artemis II. She's a NASA astronaut and a record-setting spacewalker who previously spent a record 328 days in space. Wow. And then finally, we've got the Canadian, Jeremy Hansen. He's another mission specialist for Artemis II, and he's representing the Canadian Space Agency. He's a former fighter pilot and space scientist who will be the first non-American to fly beyond low Earth orbit. So that's pretty cool. Suck it, China and Russia. All right, so what are they doing out there, right? These four are going up, hopefully in March, in Artemis II, going to go circle around the moon. This is a test run for systems and processes. They are checking everything from life support systems to communications and crewed mission operations. Obviously, the operational side of this is sending humans into space, not just a satellite or other things like that. There's a lot of things that they got to work the kinks out on and test. They'll also be running health and human performance experiments to better understand the impact of deep space travel on astronauts, including radiation exposure, sleep patterns, and immune functions. Now, why are they even doing this in the first place, right? Well, Artemis II is a critical stepping stone toward Artemis III. Oh, buddy, it gets better. Which will be the first crewed moon landing since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. So we are going back to the moon, but it's not Artemis 2. It'll be Artemis 3 in hopefully a couple years from now. So what are we doing? We're trying to plan for a sustainable lunar presence that includes bases on the moon and science stations. I assume similar to kind of like what we've got in Antarctica, and the possibility of building a gateway for longer human missions, including a potential Mars expedition in the future. That is so fucking exciting. The future is now. This marks a shift from short test flights to real human exploration beyond Earth's orbit for the first time in a generation. This is so exciting. Now, we're not the only ones interested in the moon. I do think that there is a little bit of a renewed space race going on again. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more collaboration between countries than there was at the height of the Cold War. But I do think that there's a lot of people getting very interested in what's on the moon, having a presence on the moon, what that means for power dynamics on Earth. One thing that I'll point out is we're not the only ones interested in building infrastructure on the moon. There's a Japanese-based company that I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. They want to build something called the Luna Ring around the moon. This is a conceptual, large-scale Japanese engineering proposal to construct an almost 7,000-mile-long solar power belt around the moon's equator. Now, the images I saw of this are wild. It looks like Saturn's rings, but metal and going around the moon. What are they going to do with that? It's going to generate, convert, and then beam down unlimited solar energy to Earth via microwaves and lasers. And they are saying, buckle up for this, they might start construction as early as 2035. Folks, that is not very far away for building on the moon. So a lot of things are in progress right now. As bringing it back to America, though, and just this American spirit of exploration, we were the first to put a man on the moon. We pushed west. We went to the New World. As Americans, it's in our blood to push the limits of what we can do as humans, right? And push the limits of exploration. And I think that this push to the moon, yeah, I know it's an expensive program. I know that we have a lot of problems here on Earth. I think that, yes, we must keep our eye on the ball here on Earth and here at home in the United States, but we do need to make sure that we've got some people that we are funding space operations and we are funding the scientists and astronauts that are going to make the future better for us. We have to have a long-term strategy, and that long-term strategy as a nation, as a people, probably should include increased capability in space and putting people on the moon, similar, and having a permanent presence there, similar to what we do with the International Space Station. That makes a lot of sense as far as having a jumping off point for deeper space travel. I mean, the more technology advances, some of the things that they're working on as far as sources of power and how deep space travel might be possible in the, let's call it, the next 100 years, like it makes sense for us to start building that infrastructure now. And just overall what it does for us as a country, for our self-esteem as a country, to see that American flag up there on the moon in a new place, to be going further than any humans have ever gone into space before on Artemis II. Like, that's good for the soul of our country. That's good for us as a people. It's inspiring to our children. This is an event that when that Artemis 2 launches and when Artemis 3 goes back to the moon, you're going to go crowd around the TV and watch it with your kids, I hope. You know, watch it with your parents. Watch humans go further into the future, basically, pulling us along with them. And there's one quote that I like to think of. This is not the quote of the week, but I wanted to bring up this quote from former President John F. Kennedy. He said, quote, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Quote. I mean, it gives me like fucking chills even as I say it. I say this to my daughter all the time. I go, "Hey, why do we do things?" And she says, and she knows to reply, "Because they're hard." Right? We do things because they're hard. We chase the hard things. Going to the moon, building bases there, of course it's not easy. We're not doing it because it's easy or low-hanging fruit. We're doing it because it's hard. Why? Because we're fucking Americans. And that's what we do. We do the hard stuff. We make the hard choices. We make the hard investments. We go further, faster than anybody else. That's something to be proud of. I'm fucking stoked to be going back to the moon eventually. Again, if you're seeing social media reels pop up right now saying we're going back to the moon like next week, no, we're not. But we're starting that progress, that process, right? To make progress towards landing on the moon again, landing humans on the moon again, and then who knows what the future holds from there. I really am just absolutely stoked. Now, I think it's interesting, this is not just NASA alone. I think this is in recognition of just the world that we live in right now. The Artemis program isn't being run by NASA alone. It's designed as a hybrid capability with the government and commercial partners working together, particularly Jeff Bezos, his company Blue Origin, and Elon Musk's SpaceX, which each play different complementary roles in that ecosystem. So, yeah, two guys that were mentioned, again, not saying they're guilty, but mentioned in the Epstein files. They are partnering with NASA. Their companies are partnering with NASA on this project, on the Artemis missions. Now, SpaceX is directly involved with the Artemis missions through its role as NASA's contractor for the Human Landing System, or HLS. And that's the spacecraft that will actually take astronauts from lunar orbit, so their orbit around the moon, and down onto the moon's surface and back. This Starship variant is designed to dock with a Gateway or Orion in lunar orbit and then ferry astronauts to the moon and back. And this is the first time a commercial company has been contracted to build a human lunar lander in history. That's always been the purview of NASA in the past. SpaceX may also play a role in delivering logistics cargo, supporting crew rotations, and transporting fuel or modules to a future gateway that orbits the moon. Now, Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander was selected as part of NASA's HLS contract along with SpaceX's Starship. All right. They'll be working together on that project. And Blue Origin is also involved in power systems and propulsion tech that NASA plans to use on the lunar surface, including nuclear power units, surface mobility support, and fuel depots that are critical for Artemis 4 and later missions. So Artemis 2 is the next thing going up in a month here. Artemis 3 lands on the moon. They're looking at Artemis 4 and later. And that's, kind of focused on long-term habitats and sustained science operations on the moon. Now, by using commercial partners, this is where I think this makes a lot of sense. NASA hopes this will foster competition in both cost and innovation and to create an environment for future commercial space travel that generates revenue. If this is on just NASA alone, NASA ultimately is a government entity. I believe that there needs to be outside contractors involved with this, but NASA needs to remain the lead. And I do think that everything that these contractors are doing, at least in the near term, needs to remain FOIA, Freedom of Information Act-able. There needs to be max transparency with the public, right? In the future, if space travel becomes no different than taking an Uber somewhere, then sure, we can lay off that a little bit. But where we're currently at with space travel and space exploration, I think it's good that we have commercial partners. Those government contractors, those still need to be accountable to taxpayers. And so I hope that's something that our political leaders are taking into account.
It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party. It's a Marty party.